So a couple weeks ago, I demoed how to create your own object detection model inside Runway. And if you watch that video, you know it got pretty expensive. It was like $100 to train a model inside of Runway. So I thought I'd look at some ways to training outside of Runway. So in a future video, I'm going to show you how to train your own YOLO v5 network. But the difference is that Runway has a really nice tool inside of it to do your own object labeling. And outside of Runway, you don't really have a lot of options. So I'm going to show you one tool. It's called LabelImg, and we're going to label our own images in that way. So pretty similar to Runway. I actually think the Runway UI is a little bit nicer, but I'm not sure that Runway allows you to export out those tags yet. So until they do that, you have to use some other tool outside of Runway in order to get tags to train outside Runway. So we're going to go ahead and use LabelImg. First thing we're going to need to do is we're just going to clone down this repo. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to cd / repos. And I'm going to go ahead and clone down this repo. And I'll make sure to put the link to this in our in the YouTube description. This is a pretty big file, so it does take a little bit of time to install. While this is downloading, let me show you where some of the install scripts are. Now, I've already installed the software for this, but it's pretty straightforward to get it installed. There's a folder of build tools here. I actually just recommend using these build tools. They have a ton of instructions on how to install for various OSs and how to use various tools. Like there's a Windows Anaconda one, so if you're an Anaconda person, you can go ahead and use that. I would recommend go ahead and just maybe using the build tools here. So I actually just ran the build for macOS.sh, which is just this. So you'll literally go into cd build tools and you'll run this command. So let's go ahead. I can probably just run it, and I bet you it'll just return that, hey, you've installed all this stuff already. So let's go cd LabelImg, cd build tools, and then we run this command. And you may need to run this with sudo. I found that I didn't have to on this, but I may have already installed a lot of things previously, so who knows. One other note is that relatively recently they introduced, I don't know, a bug or something, but basically if you run it for the first time and you see this error that says no module named lib.resources, the fix is to run this command. So I ran into this when I was prepping for this video, so just make sure you run this after you've set up your install. So this pretty much already said that everything's installed, so what you would go ahead and do is you would paste in this command and run it. This probably doesn't work because you need to go cd / and then run from that folder. Yep, so if you run this command from your LabelImg folder, this will go ahead and work. Okay, so now that I know everything's installed, for other folks it might take a little bit longer. If you're into issues, let me know and I can try to help where I can. So now we're going to need to go ahead and actually start the application. So run Python labelimg.py. So this is actually just a standalone Python application, and by running this command, it just launches the application. Cool. So this is the LabelImg interface. Definitely recommend like sort of looking around a little bit, and maybe I think there's a demo video of how this works on that repository if you want to sort of watch their video. The big things that I sort of look at are we want to open a directory, so we're going to go ahead and open a dataset in just a second. You'll click between images, and then one thing to note is you might want to change your save format to YOLO. What I'm going to do in my video is actually upload this to a program called RoboFlow, which sort of helps massage away a lot of dataset annoyances and can convert from YOLO to Pascal VOC and some other things. If you choose not to do that, just make sure that you're set to the right network, which is probably going to be YOLO. And open a dataset. So just come in here and click on Open Directory. Actually, just going to go to one of my cat photos here. So let's see below before. We'll open the test data set. Now, the truth is, this is going to be a really big data set. I won't go through labeling every image in here. But just be aware that, like, for these to work, I've seen generally you want about 500 to 1,000 photos. And this is probably, you know, it should be pretty evenly mixed between all of your classes. So in this case, I'm going to use 5 different famous cats, and I'm going to label all their faces with each individual cat face. So I'm going to load up this data set, and I'm going to start marking my images up. That's interesting. Okay, don't know what happened there, but now it's working. So once you've loaded up images, you'll see all of your images are over here on the right-hand side. And what you're going to do is you're just going to go ahead and click on one of these images, and it will load up. So along the right-hand side here, you've got creating a rec box. You've got next image, previous image, verifying your images, a couple other things in here as well. Now, one thing you might want to look at is how do you switching your save format. So I'm going to switch my save format to YOLO because I'm going to do a YOLO network. So this is just going to save out text files that cohere to the YOLO network. Now, when I actually do my YOLO network, I'm going to upload it to a website called RoboFlow, and they can output these formats in whatever format it needs to be in. So this doesn't really matter for these examples, but I'm going to use YOLO just to sort of show how it works. So next, we're going to need to create a rec box. So in general, the rule is to, give a little bit of padding to what you're trying to bound around. So this is going to be, I'm going to go sort of a little bit around the ears and then from the edges of Hamilton's face and then a little bit of the bottom of his face as well. When you do this, you get an option here for a label, and I'm going to type Hamilton, I'm going to hit OK. And then your next image. And I know that there are a bunch of ways to sort of go back and forth. Don't know how to find half these buttons, maybe hovering over these. There are some next and forward commands that I'm kind of blanking on at the moment. A couple other things to note is I think there's a bunch of view options in here, and I can't remember how I usually do this. I think I usually turn on advanced mode. I don't know exactly what that does for me, but it's just sort of a way to like sort of map. You get a little bit of a different function here. Like you get edit and hide and rec box and some other things. So I think that's what I remember doing. I also recall that there's like a version in here where it fixes things as squares. Yeah, so there's this draw squares thing. I would turn this off. Sometimes I accidentally turn this on because I'm trying to make rulers or something. I don't even remember what I was doing. This can get you pretty caught up because it'll force you into a square and you'll be like, I don't want a square. So make sure this is checked off. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and add a couple more rec labels here. Now you'll notice that there's no like nice key commands for like auto assigning these to different labels to each different keys. You do have to sort of type in, every time you have a new image, this sort of thing. One thing to note is I do have autosave turned on. And actually, I'm wondering if that actually did save. It did, yeah. So if you turn autosave off, you'll want to save every file before you move on. So I think Command S will do that. And then you move on to the next image and the next image. So I'm going to go and find a couple other cats just to sort of show you how this works. This one. So there's Bone Bone. So go ahead and select all of Bone Bone's face. I'm going to say Bone, Bone. OK. And then I'm going to find a couple others. So there's Pudge. So you'll notice there's no color coding. There's no Runway where there's like quick key commands. So if you are constantly switching between different labels, this can get pretty annoying because you have to type in each label every time. There's another Bone Bone. And once you've added these, we'll start to autofill. You can always move around your rec box by just grabbing a corner, and maybe you can't. Hold on. Maybe this is why I turn advanced mode off. Yes, I turn advanced mode off so I can actually change the bounding box. So if for whatever reason, you feel like you maybe missed a little bit of his face here, you can always stretch it out, and then you can hit Command Save to save your file. So let's go and see if we have a couple more here. So there's probably I found there's a lot of like other little weird ticks of this particular tool. Like you have to always go back and click Create Rec Box, especially if you have multiple labels. I think that it starts to get a little confusing where things can overlap sometimes. So just be aware of that. But all in all, this is a pretty straightforward tool, and it's pretty easy to set up, and it's free. So Runway is going to cost you a decent amount to run your YOLO training through. So this being a free tool allows you to pretty quickly, label some images. Now, again, I would label, probably about 500 in total. I've already done it in a previous setting, so I won't be doing all 500 here, but just so you can sort of see how I add new labels to this. And just to show you sort of what this looks like when you're finished, so all these files are being saved. Basically, it's saving a text file, and that text file determines the bound box of what you're doing. So let me just go in here and hit date modified. And you'll see here these labels are, so the file is labeled with like whatever the name of the file is, and then .txt. And if you open one of these, it literally just has, I believe that's probably the class, and then the labels here as well. So actually, sorry, the bounding box. So this is probably like 1 to 0, and that sort of labels, corners of each of the box. And if I come in here and click on classes, you'll see, sure enough, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I assume that 18 is what class this is. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Yeah, so it probably corresponds to the class here. So you could obviously delete all these. Well, one, don't delete it out of this file. What you want to do is come back into Python, the LabelImg, and let me see if I can figure out where my labels are. Well, this really won't become a problem, because if you don't label anything with tomato soup or whatever the hell these labels were, you'll be able to just upload it to YOLO to RoboFlow, and RoboFlow will figure it out from there. So don't worry too much about labels, as long as one thing to note is that these are like case sensitive, right? So if you label Venus with lowercase v and another one with uppercase v, that will see it as different labels. So make sure that your cases are the same. And you can also use a default label. So if there's a default label of cat that you just want to use, and you're labeling cats and dogs, you can just pick one, and then you can switch between the other if you want to. I actually don't hate the pop-up menu. After a while, you just sort of get in the groove of this thing. So once this is done, we'll have however many images we have, and we'll have corresponding text files for each of these. So in another video, I'm actually going to show the YOLO v5 training, but this is just a demo, sort of the LabelImg tool. There's lots of other reasons you might want to be labeling images this way. But most object detections, this is sort of the tool you'll use. So I think this is it for this demo. Let me know if you have any questions, and thanks for watching.